A few years ago, I was helping a friend renovate the basement of an older house he had just bought. It wasn't a full remodel. Just cleaning it up, repainting the walls, replacing some outdated wiring, and clearing out decades of forgotten storage. The house had been built in the early 1950s, and it still had that solid, heavy feel to it. Thick wooden beams, old brick foundation. Nothing flashy, but sturdy. The basement, though, felt different from the rest of the house. The ceilings were low enough that taller people had to duck under pipes. The concrete walls were cold to the touch. There was only one small window near the top of the foundation that barely let in light. Even during the day, it felt dim down there. We had been working for about an hour when I noticed something faint in the air. At first, I couldn't place it. It wasn't strong. Just a slight sharpness that didn't match the smell of dust or old paint. I ignored it for a few minutes. Basements always smell a little strange when you stir up old insulation in cardboard boxes. But the scent didn't fade. It sharpened. And then I recognized it. Natural gas. I stood still and took a slow breath to confirm it. It had that unmistakable sulfur edge. Faint, but real. I asked my friend if he smelled anything unusual. He paused, sniffed the air, and said maybe a little. But he wasn't convinced. It wasn't strong enough to alarm him. The furnace sat in the far corner of the basement. Old metal casing slightly rusted along the edges. Gas lines ran along the ceiling joists and down the wall into the unit. Nothing looked broken. Nothing looked dramatic. We kept working. And that decision still bothers me when I think about it. 10 minutes later, the smell was stronger. Not overwhelming, but impossible to dismiss now. I walked slowly toward the furnace and crouched down. That's when I heard it. A faint, steady hissing, like air escaping from a small puncture. One of the connector fittings on the gas line had developed a slow leak. Not a rupture. Not a violent break. Just a thin, invisible stream of gas escaping into a poorly ventilated basement. The window was closed. The door at the top of the stairs was shut. And basements don't circulate air well to begin with. The realization hit me hard. Gas doesn't explode instantly. It accumulates. It builds concentration over time. And once it reaches the lower explosive limit, all it needs is a spark. I told my friend not to touch anything. No switches, no lights. Because even the smallest electrical arc could ignite it. That's when the second realization hit me. We had already flipped switches when we came downstairs. We had plugged in extension cords. We had used power tools. And nothing had happened. Which meant the gas concentration hadn't peaked yet. But it was getting there. I could almost feel the air differently now. Maybe it was psychological. but it felt heavier, denser. We moved slowly toward the stairs. Deliberate steps, trying not to shuffle our feet too aggressively against the concrete, trying not to create static. Every second felt stretched thin. The basement suddenly felt smaller, more enclosed. When we reached the top of the stairs, I told him to open the front door carefully. No light switches. No sudden movements. We stepped outside into the cold air. The difference was immediate. Fresh air felt sharp in my lungs. And I hadn't even realized how tense my breathing had been until that moment. I called the gas company and explained the situation. They told us to stay clear of the house. Standing in the driveway, I replayed everything in my head. Every light switch we flipped. Every time a power tool sparked when we plugged it in. The technician arrived about 20 minutes later with a gas detector. He entered the basement cautiously. Within seconds, the device started beeping steadily. He came back upstairs and told us the concentration was rising but hadn't yet crossed the lower explosive limit. Another 30 to 40 minutes of steady leaking in that enclosed space, and it likely would have. If we had stayed. If we had ignored the smell longer. If one of us had flipped a switch at the wrong moment. The blast would have started in the basement. And basements channel pressure upward. Through floorboards. Through walls. Old houses aren't built to vent explosions safely. The fitting was tightened. The basement was ventilated. The smell slowly disappeared. But the weight of how close it came didn't disappear with it. It started with something small. A loose connector. A faint smell. It escalated quietly. Silently. Almost patiently. And the only reason nothing happened is because we recognized the warning before the chain completed itself. Since then, I never ignore that smell. Even if it's faint. Even if I think I might be imagining it. Because sometimes the difference between an ordinary afternoon and a disaster is just a few invisible minutes in a closed room.